Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Again, this day is Wednesday, November 12th, and we're here for our weekly Jupyter front-end server and kernels call. The HackMD is available in the chat, and we are recording this for the Jupyter channel, so we are following the Jupyter Code of Conduct. Please feel free to sign into the agenda. We have some signups already, so I think I can hand it over to Zach for Jupyter Server Documents.
Okay, maybe I was a little ambitious here and should go after Mike.
Oh,
We were talking last meeting, he had questions for Jupyter Server Documents, and I was going to try to get a demo going,
oh,
and I didn't get the demo fully installed. So Mike, if you want to jump
I
in.
can help. I can save you.
Okay, you save
Go
me. I
there.
love it.
Go there.
Yeah.
Or I can do that actually. Let me start, and then
Cool.
we'll switch over. So I will demonstrate only one feature of Jupyter Server Documents and talk about it in more detail. Just trying to figure out sharing consume. JupyterLab out to 22 pages. That sounds like it. Okay, Fox, can you tell me what you see?
we
We can see
see
JupyterLab.
JupyterLab.
Okay, so let's create a cell and execute it. Okay, so here it says auto-saving is enabled, manual saves are not needed. So we see that it's not standard JupyterLab, but there is an extension called Jupyter Server Documents. Does it show up here? Well, it's this one, I believe. So I wanted to talk about a problem which is called preloading notebook from disk when it gets changed on the disk. And let me demonstrate the problem and actually how this extension solves it. So when I touch this, which modifies the date, you might have seen that it reloaded and there is a pop-up saying that this file was modified on disk and the document tab has been reset, which is really nice. Now, it is not foolproof because if I do an input here, okay, I could start typing something. Let's say I type D, and first I set sleep to 4 seconds and then touch. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it actually didn't delete all my cells, but it did remove the input. And if I try to run another cell now, my kernel is deadlocked. I cannot do that. I have to restart the kernel because the input that I had disappeared. So basically, this is actually better than what Jupyter Collaboration has, because in Jupyter Collaboration, which I have in another tab, here, sorry, too many tabs. Let me start a new session. This would result in scrolling, by which I mean the focus would jump from the active cell to the first cell because the entire notebook would get reloaded. I can quickly demonstrate that. Touch. Well, I think I can. Okay, I do not know why this binder is not loading up. Might be just the load. In any case, I'm looking into solving this, and it seems that the solution would be to find a way to know that a cell changed, but the entire document or the widget doesn't need to be re-rendered. So this is what Jupyter Collaboration does. I'm in the last cell, and if I do sleep for and touch titled, I'm here. And it jumped to the first cell. Now I have a pull request which kind of fixes the jumping, but it doesn't solve the issue completely. I want to mention this and I link the pull requests. I will share them in chat and see whether folks run into this problem before and have any thoughts on how to solve it. Understand that Jupyter Widoc, which is still used by like both Jupyter Collaboration and Jupyter Server documents, does not currently expose a lot of information when a cell or notebook changes. And maybe that's like something that would benefit everybody if we change the API so that when a change to a collaborative document is made, we can cleverly compare the model and only render the widgets when this is actually needed. Yeah, so I don't know. David, I think you implemented this in Jupyter Server documents, and do you have any thoughts? Do you remember how this is implemented and what would need to happen there?
Hey, Mike, are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm cleaning my espresso machine right now, so it's a bit noisy in the background.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now we are rebooting the entire UI state whenever there is a document reset. And basically our definition of a document reset is when that last modified timestamp changes without our notice. So the same task, the same async IO task that is continuously autosaving, it tracks the last modified timestamp. And if it's a different value than what we expect, then we know that some kind of other disk write happened to that file, and we know that that changed. And basically, there's no built-in way to do this through Jupyter Widoc. So there's a couple of like slightly hacky implementations where we add this reset method to Y notebook, Y file, and all the other shared document objects in the front end, and we call it that. And what that method does is it totally clears all of the UI state. It deletes everything from the UI state. So like Y notebook.Y cells, we reset that to an empty array, reset the metadata to an empty dictionary, etc. And then and then it redoes the handshake connection. So basically it kills the WebSocket, closes the WebSocket, clears the UI state, and then reconnects as if it has an empty document. And this basically reloads the UI state back into the front-end document widget. And
And
we're
when
doing
you are
that.
reloading, are you reusing anything? Because for some reason in your implementation, the active cell doesn't jump, which is good, but I don't understand why.
I think it's because we don't reset every attribute. Like honestly, like there's a reset method that we have in our front end plugins. If you search the code base, you will be able to find those. But we basically only reset the things that contain the content, so like Y cells, etc. And I think active cell is being tracked either by an ID or an index. If we don't reset that attribute, then that attribute is going to be the same across document resets. Does that make sense? Like basically we clear most of the UI state, but not necessarily all of it, because that's doing that comprehensively without built-in method for it is a bit challenging. So we are just going manually iterating through the private attributes that we know of and resetting those back to empty states.
Okay, that
Yeah.
should not be necessary. Basically, like we should have an API to allow you to do that more easily in Jupyter Widoc. And like I'm thinking
Yeah, that would be
both
the
about
ideal.
this specific use case, but also like cells now have IDs, and if a user is using Cloud or another LLM agent which is modifying the notebook on disk, and it rearranged the cells, let's say reverted the order, they now go from back to front. The active cell should remain the same when the notebook is being reloaded. so that the user is not completely confused as to what happened. So
Yeah.
this is my goal. I've linked a couple of issues in the notes, and any additional thoughts there would be appreciated. But I think from my experimentation so far, I see that Jupyter Server documents solved a little bit of the problem, maybe not intentionally, but still would benefit from having that like a better way to infer which cells changed and like granularly reloading parts of the notebook.
Yeah, I think that would be really tricky to do that, to try and detect which cells changed. Right now, we're just doing it globally per document based on whether the last
Yeah,
modified timestamp changed.
maybe a simpler problem is which cells did not change, and at least let's not lose state
Yeah,
of the output widgets for the cells which
yeah.
stayed completely the same.
Well, yeah, and it's not just the active cell ID that we want to preserve, right? We also want to be preserving the user's scroll wheel position, their view box within the document, the notebook, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
If
ideally. Yeah.
changes are only like below default, then there is no reason to scroll, and if there are widgets, the widgets should not change state as well.
Yeah, I think right now it's just scrolling it back to top or some other random position. I don't think we have a capability of preserving the scroll position yet. But yeah, that's definitely a great idea. Yeah. And I think a part of this is going to be like, I think what's tricky is that we would have to move some of these attributes like active cell ID and scroll position, which are unique to each client. We would have to lift them out of the front end model and into something shared that the server is also aware of. Um, I don't know if that's necessary, but like one idea is to put these attributes inside of the awareness object. So like the server can kind of tell the client like, hey, after you complete the sync step 1, sync step 2 handshake, and you get the latest state of this notebook, set your active cell ID to here and then scroll here.
Yeah, it does make sense, a lot of sense. Like the awareness is because like you could imagine in a document, but you only have a cursor. Like where is this
Mhm.
user typing? So
Yeah.
my collaborator is looking at the other part of the notebook. Maybe there is an identical cell. Maybe that's why we are not syncing, like not talking about the same thing. So it's kind of like having a minimap and displaying this information on the minimap in the future. This is what the
Mhm.
awareness layer is for. So I
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, agree that we could store this information. I don't know what would be the overhead, but we can talk about this. It's a good
Yeah, I
idea.
think Zach even has an extension under Jupyter AI Contrib that adds this data into the awareness object. We were actually just looking at this right before JupyterCon. We were trying to put together a demo for this. Um, Zach, do you know what I'm talking? Yeah, here,
Yeah, it's
JupyterLab
called,
Notebook Awareness.
yeah, there's a, which I'll say is like experimentation with this. This is not, but I think this is a place we could look at some code together.
Okay,
I was trying to
so
add,
it's active cell ID, and we potentially would even talk about including the scroll position,
Yeah,
or like which cells are visible. I don't know how to represent that. Yeah,
probably
let's
like
talk about
first
it
visible
later.
cell. Yeah,
Yeah,
first
something like
visible
that.
cell. Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Sorry, this might be a
it's,
diversion, but what do you do if somebody deletes the file on disk?
That's a great question, Vidar. So that is also handled. So basically, when a user deletes a file, it closes the document widget for all the users. So basically, any other user who's connected to the same collaborative session looking at that file, when that file gets deleted, it basically closes their tab and there's another notification pop up on the bottom right that says, oh, this file has been deleted. And moves are also tracked as well. So you can also rename the file from the command line and it'll do the same thing.
Zach, do you want to start your demo, or should I continue with my topics?
Yeah, maybe I just I'll maybe jump in just for a second, Mike. I don't think you did the demo. This is great. There's a lot more to Jupyter Server Documents. I think maybe what's just helpful to say is because I don't think we've ever done it on this call. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. Is Jupyter Server Documents, where does it slot into this whole story around real-time collaboration and beyond? And why is it living in Jupyter AI Contrib? So basically, we were running into issues with Jupyter Collaboration around not the YDoc state and the YDoc APIs, but rather what sits between YDoc and the front end, which is kind of the Y room management. So that is like, how do we attach not just to the actual YDoc the state of the model or the notebook document, but also everything around that, which is like who's attached and managing the opening and closing of those, and then the WebSockets that are listening and all that. We just took a different approach at doing that than Jupyter Collaboration because there was some complexity in collaboration in Jupyter Collaboration that we couldn't easily debug, and it was pretty unstable in scenarios where we were running this stuff in cloud environment. So we were trying to see if we could simplify it. So that started as the first experiment, was just to build some robustness around Y document management. But then the real point of Jupyter Server Documents was to move the notebook model to the servers. Instead of requiring all outputs from a cell, from kernel to a cell in the front end, having to make it all the way to the front end, we actually intercept those in the server, write them into a server-side YDoc, and then the way those outputs make it back to the client is through syncing of the YDoc, not through listening to the WebSocket channels. So we actually intercept messages, inject them into the YDoc and server, and then that allows us to solve problems like losing state from the notebook document when the front end isn't connected, or losing cell execution state, or outputs that were coming in while a user closed their window. So that was kind of the reason we really wanted to build that. It started as we wanted a way for AI agents to collaborate in the document, and that was easiest to do in the server. So that's why it started as a project in Jupyter AI Contrib, which is where we're doing some experimentation with AI agents and UX. And so that's the current state of thing. What I just want to say was, in that, I think we learned a lot about like some public APIs that we would love to add to JupyterLab, also to Jupyter Server, to make this possible. So it's not really necessarily replacing things in any of these core pieces. It's just exposing APIs that would help us in these efforts. And so I think Jupyter Server Documents specifically, like a lot of it's going to go away because it'll get broken up into pieces that belong in Jupyter Server Core, JupyterLab, and then whatever ends up being Jupyter Collaboration. But I think the hope is that a lot of that stuff just gets completely gutted out and put into their places in the core repos. That work's going to take a little bit of time. That's why it's living as an extension, was for us to be able to run these things in some sort of state for people to test and for people to use. But the goal over the next few months, I think, even though it's a heavy lift, is to move parts of these out of Jupyter Server Documents into core projects. And that, one thing I want to highlight there, and I talked about this with multiple people at JupyterCon, is there is a repo I have had around for a long time called Next Generation Kernels API. I'll grab the link for that and drop it here in a second. But this is just an opinionated way for the front end to talk to kernels in the back end that I think is actually technically more Jupyter standard than we're doing in Jupyter Server. The way we do things in Jupyter Server is like pretty hacky, and it's been that way for a long time. And one of the biggest consequences of it is if you run a Jupyter Server for longer than a few days, you will notice a ton of memory leaks that exist in the core server and have probably been there for a long time. And it's around the fact that we do a lot of kind of complex things to open up sockets, ZMQ sockets, individually throughout the server. And then because we don't have anything maintaining kind of a mapping of those sockets, they can easily get orphaned and then just live around forever. And so every time you connect to a kernel from the client, you are opening up a new set of ZMQ sockets. And so there's not like one set of ZMQ sockets for a kernel. There are many, and they're dependent on how many kernels or how many WebSockets you can connect from in the front end. And so this just says, no, we're going to have a single kernel client. That kernel client is using Jupyter client's kernel client, right? That's a standard class we have. So we're just using that instead of doing this kind of ad hoc opening of ZMQ sockets. We'll use a single API that already exists today. And then that'll be the main thing that the WebSocket taps into is a client that already opens. And it simplifies the backend pretty significantly, eliminates a lot of those leaks. But then because of that, we can extend the client class. And that's what we do in Jupyter Server Documents is we extend that client class to route messages. Instead of going up to the WebSocket, we go directly into a YDoc. So it becomes a really clean extension point for us to move the notebook model to the server. And so I'm going to be opening a pull request hopefully today on that, proposing these new APIs in the core Jupyter server. And we'll ask for reviews from folks who are interested. But I just wanted to put those two together because Jupyter Server Documents will benefit a lot from providing those core APIs in the core server. And I think we'll also clean up a lot of bugs we're seeing. That was it. Sorry, Mike, to intercept, but just some background on Jupyter Server Documents.
Thank you for that. Okay, I think I will quickly go with my items to let Ian and Matthias also have some time. So first, last week or 2 weeks ago, actually, we discussed the conversion of JupyterLab documentation to Markdown. And at the time, there were voices of discontent regarding, please do not merge that pull request before JupyterCon because we are giving tutorials and we don't want it to break. Now, given that JupyterCon has passed, I hope it was a great success. I would like to merge the pull requests right during this call. Is there any last objection or anyone who's reviewing it and didn't manage to click submit on the review? If I don't hear anything or don't see anything in the chat, by the end of the meeting, I'm merging that PR. Okay, the next point is JupyterLab 4.5 release. We've been in RC for 2 or 3 weeks now, and there are not real blockers, nothing terribly breaking there, except for one issue related to how the new default content visibility mode interacts with some extensions, and this is actually just one extension, which is JupyterLab execute time, but also how it interacts with widgets which or outputs of cells which extend beyond the layout containment of the cell. So like some content could be cut off. And I would really like to understand what people think about releasing 4.50 without a patch for that. Like there is something that we figured out we could do. And I think that the two solutions are we either decide that this is not a deal breaker, this is not a release blocker, and release 4.50 today or tomorrow, or we merge the patch, release a new release candidate, and wait at least another week for it to be tested, because the implications, like the windowing modes, are very difficult to work with, and even like with the most thoughtful review, I wouldn't be confident releasing a new version without having more time for people to test it. It's just, I don't know, looking at this issue, does anyone have opinions on, yeah, this is a bug that would be a blocker for upgrade for me, or does it look like a mostly niche use case that is being affected? I guess it might be useful for me to share my screen quickly. So this is an example of where in content visibility mode, the information is cut off. And in all other modes, we get the full circle visible, and it depends on having the position fixed there. Okay. Not hearing much feedback. The link to the issue is in the chat, and the link to the PR is in the notes. If anyone has comments, please do. Otherwise, I think it is a good time to start drafting a blog post for the release of JupyterLab and Notebook. And just wanted to highlight that thanks to the analytics on the docs, we were able to make some more educated decision as to where to link the changelog from. And we got at least 150 unique views on the 4.4, 4.5 changelog. So I think, yeah, this is turning out to be pretty useful. If anyone is interested, there is, you can view the stats yourself. And finally, I have two pull requests where I'm looking for review. One is just a maintenance kind of thing, fixing the CI to be less flaky, and the other is a bug fix for performance of navigating Notebook. That's all from me.
Thanks, Mike. I think so. We have about 25 minutes left. I believed, Zach, those are items from earlier on in the agenda.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. I think up next we have Ian.
Yep. Hi, everyone. This is a quick one. So we have, well, Vidar has cancelled the future Thursday server and kernels meetings, as we're now part of this meeting. I just made an entry in the notes to ask if we can have the name of this meeting officially changed to either include server and kernels, or to not specify just front ends, so that people can find it more easily. And I think, yeah, Mike, I guess, was making the comment that if we put all of the titles in, it's very, very long. So maybe Jupyter Core Meeting is good, and then the following paragraph can mention front ends, accessibility, server, kernels. I'm mentioning it because I guess I don't have rights to change any of this stuff, like the meeting name and description.
And that would be the meeting name on the community calendar. Is that right? And also the HackMD?
Yeah, so it looks, yeah, that's correct. It looks like the HackMD, the text at the top is correct, but I've got like a title bar which still says JupyterLab weekly meeting minutes. So that's some sort of extra super title or something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I am not sure who might have permissions to change the extra title. I think because Alex Bozarth is the owner.
I've got the meeting open right now. What should I type?
I think there are a few suggestions in the chat.
If we can just narrow down something, I'm happy to type it in.
I think core sounds reasonable.
Jupyter Core Meeting.
Yeah, most people say that. As long as we don't offend the Jupyter Hub folks.
Or people get confused that this is just for the Jupyter Core repository.
Tell you what, why don't we let's just leave that open. Let's have Matthias's questions, and then we'll come back to it next week.
No. Let's close the loop. For now,
core.
No,
it's going to take us an hour.
No, core. Let's just go with core for now, and then we can change that. Let's use next week to decide how well it went. Jason, does that sound good? Sub-project meeting.
Yeah, Zach, type exactly in the chat exactly what you want it to be, and I'll just copy paste it. Sounds good. What an injection prompt. Injection.
I mean, I think the distinction, basically this is now expanded to consume everything that is not Hub.
Not Jupyter Hub meeting. Got it.
Not Jupyter Hub. That's right. That's right. So, perhaps something more whimsical or something like that, right? Like I don't think, yeah, well, they don't show up to meetings anyway. So it's I organizing it around what is shipped makes sense to me. So we had Jupyter Desktop. Perhaps it is Jupyter on the desktop or something. Like what is the things that you install? Where do people go for the things that someone that just wants to use Jupyter and not have a relationship with a cloud provider? Where they go? This is where they go. Right? They want to do interactive computing on their computer. I think that's, that if we start getting away from that to only optimizing for things that are cloud deployed, this is going to be worse. Yeah, Jupyter client applications. Yeah, that's not terrible. Something like that. But yeah, that's all I got. And to that end, something that is slightly more whimsical space. Now, it's the same problem. It's the same problem, man. It's the same problem. People feel not welcome here because they're not doing the thing that's on there. So we're looking for something that's, more inclusive to that. Jupyter users meeting, right? Right. I mean, there's something on there. Nah, don't call it that. That's triggering. That's very triggering. That's when you get laid off.
Jupyter applications.
It's reasonable. Yeah, it's reasonable. And I yes, it's very much to that point of like trying to create it in a term that if you look down the list of there's not that many meetings anymore, right? So it's no one's watching the infrastructure. Who even knows how NBViewer works?
All right, I just changed it to Jupyter applications and then put in the description Jupyter frontends, Jupyter kernels, Jupyter server, Jupyter accessibility subprojects.
It's great.
If anybody comes up with a good all-encompassing title, we can always iterate on it. Naming things is hard. Yes, thank you, Mike. All things that Mike works on. I love that. How's that? Actually, Mike works on other stuff too. Never mind.
Awesome. And I think maybe we can follow up with how we would change the HackMD notes. I'll take a look at that and reach out to maybe Alex Bozar. Okay. And thanks, Ian, for bringing that up. I think we have up next Matthias.
Hey, can you hear me? Let's start with that, maybe. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update on these triaging efforts that we're doing and get some feel the opinions about it if there are any, and yeah, and then maybe discuss two small PRs. So maybe I don't know whether everyone has followed that, but we are testing a triaging agent on the JupyterLab issues. Basically, it has as input the entire issue history with embeddings, and then it just goes through issues, issue by issue, looks at all the context put from different sites, and then it tries to make a first assessment whether it's easy to solve or not, and so on. And and so we have ran this basically on all open issues now, and so I thought it's quite interesting to see the stats that it outputs. Yeah, sorry, Mike. I thought you would be interested in knowing where these pings coming from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but so the stats are that it thinks that about 20%, well, about 10% of issues, 12% actually, it thinks are already in some form completed. Then we have about 8% of the issues are duplicates, not relevant, unclear, with more information. So that's about 20% of issues that seem not really, or I mean, resolvable, let's say, or not actionable. And then we have 80% of the issues which it considers legit. And of these 80% of the issues, it thinks that 40% are easy to resolve, which makes it, if like 40% of 80% are about 30% of everything that we have, so 1/3. And so we try to kind of tackle this whole agent question from the bottom right now, for a reason that I can say a bit later, trying to first close all of the stuff that it sees as completed. And we went through about 100 of them. That's where all these pings came from, Mike. And so right now it says that from the 100, we managed to close about 70, I think, maybe a little bit less. In some sense, it was right in around 70% of those issues, with a little caveat that the reasoning was not always right. Sometimes it was right that it should be closed, but not exactly because of what it proposed. So that's where we are here from the bottom. And then I started to also resolve the easy ones with the same agent, basically, because it already has the background information. It can open the PRs. It doesn't go by hand, but it doesn't take super long to do it. I'm not at all a JupyterLab developer until now. I hope I get more experience, and I hope I don't spam you with too much bullshit. Or I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this in a recording. But Mike, sorry if that happens. And but I think I had the feeling from my development experience that I can close these easy ones in something like 2 hours on average, maybe 2-3 hours, make a reasonable PR. And then there's afterwards, of course, review and all kinds of other stuff with it. But I thought it's an interesting thought experiment. If you spin that story a bit further, you could with a little task force basically close the 20% of resolvable issues, or go through them in something like 6 weeks full-time work. It was about my speed to tackle all of the low complexity issues. It's a bit more. It's a few months of work. And so that's the stats. And to finalize this little update, so that was kind of the bottom-up view, in the sense that we're looking at what is easiest to resolve. But you can also take the other view and look what is most highest priority from the issue perspective. But for that, you need to analyze the full issue database, because you want to do some global prioritization, basically. And that's only done right now, so I'm not yet sure what that is, but it's coming basically now. Anyway, that's this triaging effort. As ideas what we could potentially do. I mean, we could just continue as we do and just solve stuff issue by issue. We could also add a tag on the things that it believes are easy to resolve. Kind of mass tagging with some safe label on the JupyterLab issue tracker directly, and then everyone can go through them. Afterwards, it's a bit iterative. So, for example, if you hit an issue where it thought it's resolvable and it's actually not, I'm trying to add the information into the issue, why it's actually not resolvable, to make it more explicit, so that in the next run it will find that information and then it understands it better. And yeah, so it's quite fun to work with it. It's a little bit like a game, which is not that difficult to win if you look at the easy to solve stuff only. Okay, yeah, that was the little overview. Sorry, there are no kind of direct immediate questions other than what do you think about it? But I'm quite curious about this because I kind of jumped into this code base and issue tracker from the sites. So yeah. Any opinions?
I think this is super valuable because then in the triage meeting, when we look at new issues, like when we search for reference points, the fewer irrelevant results we see, the easier the work gets. And the same goes for like reporting new bugs that we as developers try to like open some discussion, and having categorization between open and closed is great. And I think even better outcome of many of these revisitations of existing issues is that either you or the bot, you're finding connections and cross-linking issues which are relevant, and that's super important because that makes work much easier. And also, like, sometimes there are workarounds in another copy of an issue, and that's great too.
Okay, any thought about continuing as is, or whether we what's your thought about mass labeling at some point to tag, for example, everything with low-hanging fruit, which it thinks it's a low-hanging fruit, knowing that 30% of these are probably still difficult to solve. So it's pretty high error rate.
The only potential downside would be if adding the label makes sorting issues. Like that does it update the issue in the sense that if I sort by recently updated, will I get 3 or 4 pages of issues where the only action was adding a label? If you could test that, and if that does not affect the sorting algorithm that GitHub uses, I think this is fine, because I know like this will not send mass notification to user, which is different than adding a comment and saying, hey, a bot thinks it's like low-hanging fruit, so a label is better in that sense. But I saw that at least on the new page, landing page of GitHub, sometimes some innocent actions can mess up things and trigger changes in algorithm. So like double checking that adding a label does not mess sorting, I think I don't have any other concern. This is like low risk. It seems to me. And the other thing is maybe some newcomers, like new contributors, could misinterpret that and start working on something without knowing that there is a risk that this label might be wrong. So maybe adding documenting that this label might be wrong along the same place in existing contributor documentation where we mention good first issue label. Maybe that would be enough.
Another possibility for putting metadata on issues is what UV did with the PR triage bot, which is you treat a project board as basically a database of extra metadata that you're associating with any issues or pull requests. And then all that metadata is sort of localized to that project board. So you have specific views on the project board that you sort and filter and whatnot. And it's visible on the issue. Like you see maybe the project board and like some of the metadata from the project board on the issue, but it's not like an integral part of the issue. It's more like metadata associated with that issue that's on the project board. So that might be a way to easily associate information without triggering updates and having it be sort of part of the issue.
That sounds pretty good to me. Actually, is it difficult to get a project board on the JupyterLab?
Not difficult at all. In fact, if you wanted to include, right now the PR triage spot is limited to PRs, and it has a number of functions that automatically try to divine some information about the PR that it then updates information on the project board. You're welcome, and I'm happy to just sit down with you with the PR triage bot and sort of walk through how it does its thing. But we've got an action set up that it automatically is running. Mike is, I'm sure, looking up links and stuff. I don't know. Anyway, the PR triage bot automatically runs in an action, I think, every hour and goes through all the issues, all the PRs, and divines some information, figures out through API calls, etc., several pieces of information, and then updates the PR triage board automatically, and sort of just all runs in the background. And then you can just come and look at the PR triage board whenever you want. I'm happy to sit down with you and like walk through how that works, and then maybe together we can come up with some ideas for.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know when you have a good when
I can do it right after this meeting. Yeah.
I can. Well, let's say we can stay for 5 more minutes to find it a moment, but I have to leave unfortunately after.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But yeah, that sounds good to me because I hope that we can bring this more. Right now it's kind of all on my computer, and it would be nice to push this information out so that everyone can use it, and that it's a little bit less dependent on just me. But I'm not yet entirely sure what the best way is, but this board seems like a very good first step. Okay, and then there were two little questions, or maybe just to underline what I said before. So basically, 50% of the issues are quite easy to resolve. That's the kind of bottom line from it. Then there were 2 PRs opened through this process, basically. So one was to solve the default text placeholder when an empty markdown cell is rendered. And there was a little discussion on what to actually do. I don't know whether everyone knows what I'm talking about. Maybe you can share my screen quickly. Actually, I don't have Jupyter running here, but I can share the original issue, which has the description. Can you see this?
Yes.
It's this text here, which appears when you have an empty cell with markdown and then you render it. Then it's not empty afterwards, but it shows this thing. And so, how can I go back? I have to change this. Okay, there we go. And so we had 3 options for what to do with this. So one is to have to make this configurable, and to move this actually into the unrendered cell, the default text, and to leave the rendered cell empty, because it's a bit weird right now that the unrendered cell doesn't show the hint, but the rendered one does. It could also be completely removed. And we could alternatively, if there's an empty cell, add a visual indicator to the cell sidebar, for example. Instead of making it blue, it could maybe be another color or something. Yeah, any thoughts about this? Sorry, jumping a little bit into something very specific here. To jump out with my personal opinion, I think we should remove it and have a visual indicator because it has several advantages. One, it gets rid of that whole logic, so it simplifies. Two, a color or something is more universal maybe than this text, which also may need to get translated. And then you need a new setting to customize it and so on. So that's my gut feeling, knowing that I'm not, I'm an occasional JupyterLab user, so I don't know what other implications this may have.
Do have opinions. One of the opinions is color is not necessarily more accessible because you need to find a color which works with other colors that we have and all themes. And the sidebar thing has so many colors already, and there is a proposal to add even more. Now, removing that, like changing the default to be empty text, that should be fine. But as an extension point, I just linked to Jupyter Everywhere, which was actually highlighted on JupyterCon, which is a simplification of Jupyter interface for use in education in schools, and that is making use of that empty cell indicator and adding some more empty cell indicators, just because this is for like a very different audience, which needs to understand that like what they can type, where they can type, what do they need to do. Like if it's an empty rendered cell, they need to double click to start editing it. If this is like, you can actually go to the page and preview that on not on Binder, but on the deployment. If you click on jupytereverywhere.org, that should, and create a Python notebook. It's a JupyterLab, so the first time you load it, it takes a couple of seconds. So if you render this cell or click on it to add a new cell, yeah, this is a cold cell out code here. And for Markdown, it doesn't say Markdown, it says text. If you switch it to Markdown or like add text. So like, I wouldn't remove that altogether. And if you were to render a Markdown cell, it would say double click or click twice or something like that.
Okay, yeah,
because
this
it's a
makes
useful
sense to me. I
extension
mean,
point.
this is like in other web forms as well, right? Just in the unrendered. So if we go for a similar approach, then
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks. And so you would make that configurable in the setting as well, or is it not necessary?
Yeah, possibly. I do not oppose to adding
Translate.
that as a setting. Because it makes it easier to configure for anyone who's deploying JupyterLab without having to write an extension. So if they are like in a different context where they don't want that or want to have a different text, having a setting is good. I think this
Okay,
no-brainer.
sounds good. I think I can. And then the next point, sorry, we're already over time, I think. I don't know how you handle that. Was about this option to hide the main menu of Jupyter. So this also came up from the triaging bot, but we also had a use case for that actually, and maybe somebody else has a better idea. But the main thing was to use JupyterLab in an embedded way, where you want to hide basically everything and just have some widget or the notebook or something like this. And we used another extension for this right now, but I thought this should actually be in Jupyter, or it sounded like something to me that should be in JupyterLab core to be able to, present similar almost like in, I don't know, in PowerPoint or somewhere where you have a present button and then you just get the full screen view. And with full screen, I don't mean the full screen, but the full tab. Because if you embed it into a website, you don't want to go full screen. And the simple mode basically gets you there 99%, except for the main menu. And yeah, and that's where this this idea came up to add another option to hide the main menu first. And yeah, and I think the first question here is what do we do once the main menu is hidden, because the user is kind of lost then. They cannot go back through the UI. We can either, options that came up was either show a text initially when it's activated, that you need to, I don't know, press escape or something to go back. Another option would be, I don't know how complex that would be, to have some floating UI element somewhere, but the question is where. And yeah, and then also, I guess, maybe it would make sense to have some kind of setting even for this, or I don't know, if people want to configure this in one way or another. Yeah, are there any other opinions about that functionality?
I think we should have that. I written code for hiding the main menu countless times now for various organizations and various deployments of JupyterLab. We should have that in the core. Now, as for how to solve the issue of people getting into hard to state, which is hard to recover from, well, one idea is not having a shortcut in the first place and allowing users to set the shortcut if they want to, but still they can click that from the main menu in the PR as you added. And I would just answer that adding a notification is easy. Like when I demoed Jupyter Server documents earlier and it triggered a reload after a modification on disk, it showed a little pop-up in the bottom right corner. This is using the notification system, which is documented in JupyterLab docs. Sorry.
Okay, so how? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that is pretty straightforward.
Okay, great. So how about we don't set an initial keyboard shortcut. We add a notification, and on escape, you drop out of the thing by default. Then I guess it's fairly safe, right? I mean, people tend to hit escape.
Don't touch escape. It is an
Sorry,
absolute minefield. So
escape is a minefield? Okay.
Yeah, you can't turn off the browser's escape if you are in an actual proper full screen. And escape is already heavily used in the modal editing tool. So if you hit that wrong, you're in your flow, all that, your muscle memory takes over, you hit escape, and now all the UI comes crashing back down on you. That's not what you would want with, if you're in a presentation kind of setting. Yeah, I mean, the way that we've looked at this before, or the way that I've spooled this out before, notebook and lab, there's a deeper abstraction under them, which is that app shell being a declarative structure. And so, if you could create a new workspace and a new tab that was still the same stuff as you were using, but now had a more limited set of UI in a presentation setting, that's going to give you a way to get out, because that, it's another, sub document or something like that. Workspace is a crazy format. It doesn't have a lot of things going for it. It doesn't have a schema. If you're missing extensions, it doesn't work, all that kind of stuff. But it is the thing that we have. And so thinking about patches to the page architecture, like the underlying DOM architecture, because in a lot of places you can't just get rid of it, right? You can hide it, but if you get rid of it, that's going to, people put unique content there because it's difficult to do things like nested menus and try and have some organization of stuff, even though we throw away a lot of that data. Like the modal command palette just throws out category information. So if you spend time writing categories, you don't get them. Yeah. So there definitely needs to be a place for this. People want this in a lot of different ways. They want just a notebook. They want a notebook just next to a rendered markdown, so they render the same way. You don't want to have something that renders entirely different, especially if you've got math. Like having incorrect math that renders the same incorrectly is less jarring than having one that is right and one that is, the way that you'd get it if you were interacting with it. So in the specific case of main menu, there's a lot of unique functions there that are not exposed effectively through any other means. So yeah, including them in there. I mean, I think what you'd want to determine is what is the minimal mode of the of some union of the main menu and the command palette that gets a persistent place on screen. And if that's the Jupyter logo that lives up in the top left corner, or whatever you've rebranded it to be, BSD3 clause, no warrant of merchantability, you're not saying it's Jupyter anymore. You're saying that it's whatever your product is good for you. Like something that's always on the screen and isn't going to move would be my take on that. And whether that, depending on your left to right or right to left user, would you put that on the right of the screen, left of the screen? Further things that can be controlled. But yeah, I would watch out, touch and escape for sure.
Okay, I mean, to me that makes sense to have just a logo that you can click and then if you want, or that you can reconfigure and then you somehow get back to other views. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you use you go use a graphic design program, they do a lot of things with layers, UI layers. But something that floats is gonna conflict with something at some point, right? Something that doesn't. It's going to be in somebody's way somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why the main menu is good, because we can't. Well, you can put stuff up there, and you can make it go so wide that it overloads and then it doesn't draw correctly anymore. That happens. But yeah, thinking about a layered approach. Kind of the Lumino shell right now. There's the background, which is gray in light mode, and there's the darker or lighter gray on the dark mode, because it's whatever, dark mode color value stuff, and everything is in a single layer. If you had a layer that still reserved that space on the screen, so there was always a place to get out, you're saying, I've got this layer, I'm reserving this space for that specific thing.
You mean like basically a transparent bar or something like this?
Well, I think that's I think you need to reserve a space that's not going to get occluded by some other content for that escape hatch. You know, to be able to get there. So it's Fitz law, if you always slam your mouse up to the top left corner, except if you're on a Mac because they took the top left corner, but if you're in full screen, maybe you get it back, you're gonna get it back, and you can click there and type on it, and you know, whatever, and you can access it from the keyboard, and it never leaves your ability to be accessed by the keyboard. You know, those are kind of things. Then your main menu, the actual menu itself, those vertical 30 pixels or however much space it gets plus its padding, yeah, that could now float on top of the content that's underneath it, which, you know, in the case of a notebook or something, that would occlude some stuff there, but that's probably what you want. So yeah, much like Mike, I've written that so many times. And another thing that is not terrible is you leave a little bit of an alpha on it, so that it's there. You know, I've done that in a presentation setting where it's like, I know what it is, and I don't have to move my mouse to a place, wait for something to happen, and then move my mouse again to find the thing that I want. But you know, it's always there. I just gotta go find it. But again, in a presentation setting, that's where people start reading from, whether they're right to left or left to right readers. They're gonna start reading at the top of the page. So if you always have a little shadow there, that's not great either.
Right. I mean, I think that requires a little bit of thinking of the design, of already thinking through where to best place it, right? Maybe we can break it down to have this, because what we have right now is it's super simple because it's just hiding it completely, which is dangerous as we discussed before, but maybe we can start with that, have the extra discussion to make it better. And
well,
or do you think that would?
I mean, as usual, when we talk about making big swings at the UI, what I would first suggest is writing a new provider at the Lumino plugin level of the main menu widget. That is, it's an area, it gets on the page, and you can overload that by providing another plugin. And so if we end up with a third-party installable plugin that you know, you install this and you enable it. Maybe those are two separate steps, or maybe it's a thing that it has. It keeps the scope a little bit smaller rather than everything having to now react to this possibility that it might not be there. And then that would give you the design language opportunity to say, all right, well, now that it's my widget and I'm not having to deal with the entire JupyterLab code base, every single screenshot, you know, does everything still work inside of that? You can limit the blast radius of what those changes would be like to just see, yeah, if I've got this on, you know, I'm just throwing you don't overload the lab icon because someone else might load that with their own thing, like the actual ID thing that goes in the top left corner. So that's still, you know, someone else is giving you that lab icon, but then the rest of it is local to your extension. One, that's going to get you something much faster than waiting for another release to come out, right? That you can install and run yourself. Two, other people can look at it and give you feedback just on that thing, because they're not going to give you feedback on how it fits into all of JupyterLab. That's harder to get, you know, perspective. But then once it's happy, then you're making the proposal, let's adopt this existing extension that already has tests. And now that's a different kind of discussion than let's go back and forth on this in-flight thing that's, you know, isn't fully ready. You know, like, just because CI takes a long time, getting eyeballs takes a long time. If you show up with something that someone can pip install, that's an easier sell to be like, should we bring this in? Yes, let's bring it in. And that's how some stuff came in. So I like all the
okay. So you would make an extension for this, if I understand correctly, first, and where we can test it. And
already have it. Yeah. Crucially, you'd already have it. You wouldn't have to wait for a JupyterLab release to get it. Right.
Right.
So
okay. Can you write some of that down in the in the PR,
Sure.
maybe?
There's I mean, the key doc is let's see here, JupyterLab federated extensions, or whatever they call them, shared extensions, adding extensions, support for Linux. Oh, Lordy, developing extensions. Here we go. There's one called common extension points. Yeah, here we go. So kind of the bottom of the stack is this thing, this piece of documentation, and where is it? So that's like, this is what someone that wants to use your main menu would be looking at. They would see this main menu, and you can add things to it, and you need to answer all the mail on all those things happen, but you can just reuse the existing code, so it's not like it's a huge deal. Then there is a bit about replacing them. And the easier way to look at that might be at an existing thing that overloads it, that overloads some other piece. So like there's the file, JupyterLab file tree, I think is an extension. Yes. Oh, but it's abandoned. Oh, never mind. JupyterLab replace core component, because it's everything really reusing common extension. Okay, it goes down. Yeah, it's kind of at the higher level one. Managing plugins, extension, JupyterLab extension, browsing extensions. There's a bit. I'm looking for it on the user docs here, because if it ain't in here, then we're not going to interface customization. Maybe that's it. Nope. Toolbars. Nope. Menu bar. Yeah, I mean, there is more stuff about menu. It's just there's a lot of people who invest a lot in getting their stuff into these places, that if you're going to change a lot how it works.
Right.
It's like the scrolling thing that Mike was talking about, right? Like, it's no fun if their cool thing now just doesn't show up anymore. All right, I'm
For
still,
sure. Yeah.
still.
I tagged you on the PR as well. Maybe we can write 2-3 things there directly about this. But I mean, yeah, I'm definitely willing to put some more work in this, because it would be quite useful for us.
Yeah.
To have it in, so we can make it a little bit more, complex and so on. Because then the question afterwards is, once we have a solution for this, would we want a real presentation mode? I was quite confused by simple mode, presentation mode, and so on, as they are defined right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
simple
know
mode
what
actually
you think
takes
about
up more real estate than the basic one, right?
Yeah.
It actually
And
yeah, so there have been a
and
number.
presentation mode, I mean, it's not what at least I would have expected from it.
No, it's just a little bit bigger headers, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And you still end up with the situation where if you're in a projected setting, the thing that you just scrolled to, due to the way that you expect to be able to use JupyterLab, is at the bottom of the screen, where people's heads are blocking the thing that's at your bottom of your screen. So you got to relearn how to do that. Yeah. There have been a number of attempts in the past to provide a presentation-like experience that mixes in interactive computing. So the first one was called Rise. We landed the static form of that inside of NB Convert, so that you could take a notebook and turn it into a standalone HTML file that used Reveal.js to give you slides. And it does the right thing. It centers them on the page. It makes them hella big. Like, you get all the things that you expect from a slide. You can still make text boxes so long that they need scroll bars, which is a bad slide. There's a reason that PowerPoint doesn't let you do that. It's bad. Rise was the first one like that. There was another one called NB Present out of Anaconda that did a similar thing, but a lot more aggressively. So it actually had, color modes and multiple ways that you could get in and out of a page. We recooked it again on JupyterLab Deck, was another installable one that did that. And that was broken basically by virtual rendering, because the whole concept of being able to hack directly on the hot DOM nodes from the notebook it doesn't work. It didn't work in Classic. It doesn't work in JupyterLab, because there's, you know, like we're talking about, right? Someone's going to go in and replace the main menu with some other DOM entirely. You know, it's not considered part of the public API. So
Right.
a real presentation mode, yes, that is a thing that has been desired for about a decade.
And let me show you our actual use case, because it's not exactly a presentation, but I think there's a lot of commonalities. Sorry, we're a bit quite a lot over time.
No, sorry to jump in. I was just wondering, maybe for the sake of keeping the recording not too long, I can stop the recording and then we can continue the meeting off. That sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining again. And then we're going to stick around for talk off the record. So I will stop the recording.